a lot of people point back to J. Frank Dobie, his book, The Mustangs. And there's certainly some really good historical references. He claims that there may have been 2 million horses in Texas and on the Great Plains, but obviously there's no way that you could actually do a population estimate back then. But that would indicate that there was vast numbers of horses across Texas. And, with the Wild Horse Desert of South Texas, that sand sheet country, that was certainly a reason why they called it that. I would imagine that the wild horse history is somewhat similar to our Longhorn history. Texas, up until about 1860s or so, whenever the Comanche were pushed out of their homeland and onto reservations, there was vast swaths of the state that was unsafe for Texans and Americans to travel in. And it was in a lot of those areas that you had huge populations of Longhorns and also horses that were just living their existence and evolving or adapting, or the survival of the fittest. It didn't go back from a species standpoint, but there was certainly many, many generations where, only the toughest animals survived. And it wasn't until the Comanches were placed onto the reservation or diminished to such an extent where a lot of that stuff along the Caprock and, west of Uvalde and really South Texas stuff, it wasn't until they were able to figure out how to get water down there until people really moved into that country. But, that's where you had your origination with a lot of the famous cattle trails, your Goodnight-Loving and these big 20-year periods where they're gathering all these Longhorns that were just running wild in the brush and out on the grass. There was horses out there too. And, they'd push them up to Kansas to hit with the railroad lines and, following the cattle drives. But yeah, in Texas, we didn't have wild horses that made it through the, I guess, the taming of the Texas landscape, to my understanding at least. But, their bloodlines are still in the horses that we have today. I mean, there's a lot of ranch horses all over the place that, trace their heritage back a couple hundred years into Texas. So their bloodlines are still there, but there's, been many, 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 many generations of animal husbandry and domestication to produce our more common breeds like, quarter horse and the thoroughbred and the popular stuff.